You are listening to the Getting Lucky Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. This is episode 21. Today we are going to review the UFC on Fox 6, the flyweight championship match between Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson versus John Dodson. To help me do that, I welcome back to the show our dear friend, Mitchell.
I am excited to talk about a hell of a night of fights.
If you're excited about it, I can't hear it in your voice. Can you step it up a little bit, please?
Absolutely. Get ready to listen to us talk about some flyweights who went at it like little hummingbirds.
Keep your pantyhose on. All right, so as before, we'll do all the prelims in part 1, and then we'll do the main card in part 2 with a little extra something special, a little bet that Mitchell and I had in part 2. It was a lot funner of a bet when I thought I was going to win. All right, so the first fight on Facebook, welterweights, David Mitchell defeating Simeon Thorsen by a unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. David Mitchell is, of course, your cousin.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that he won. Excited.
David Mitchell goes to 12-2 overall. He broke a 2-fight losing streak. His first fight in the UFC, Thorzine, he is now 17-4-1 and extends his losing streak to 2 fights. He is now 1-2 in the promotion. Let's move on.
Not much to talk about with that fight. It was just
no. In fact, you can actually go. Anyone that wants to watch the fight, I believe there were technical difficulties during the Facebook card, and the UFC just posted it for free afterwards. So go check out the UFC Twitter, and you can watch the fight. Let's go to the FX card. We have Rafael Natal winning in straight sets, just like I predicted over Sean Spencer. And by straight sets, I mean, of course, a arm triangle choke in the third round.
He looked great. I thought Spencer looked pretty decent, but Natal, I thought his experience was going to show, and it did, and that's how he caught him. He was all him in the third round.
Yes. They were pretty even on the feet, but as soon as it went to the ground, it was like a man fighting a boy. In fact, first round and second round, if those rounds were just 20 seconds longer, like if it was regulated that each round was 5 minutes and 20 seconds, Rafael Natal would have finished him every round. Because he was mounted in round 1, throwing punches, and in round 2, I believe he almost had a rear naked choke.
Oh yeah, he was Spencer was saved by the bell.
Right, and of course, in between round 2 and 3, Spencer's corner, straight out of Rudy, the movie. Now's your time. You got to do this, man. Do you really want it? The guy's like, yeah, I want it, but I'm getting my ass kicked. Do you mind?
There's nothing he could do.
Round 3, we had a mounted crucifix, almost an Americana, and then the triangle choke from full mount. So absolute domination by Rafael Natal. These guys were middleweights, by the way. What do you think? What do you think about Natal? How do you think his performance puts him?
I didn't really have him anywhere, especially in the cluster that is the middleweight division. He's not really on my radar. I still think he needs a bevy of wins to go somewhere. I don't think he's a threat. How do you see him?
He's now 15-4-1. He's 3 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. I do think he needs to string together 2 or 3 more fights before he really gets relevant.
Absolutely. When you take a majority draw against Jesse Bongfeld, who is less than a gatekeeper, like is he still employed by the UFC?
Let's take a look. I love his name.
Yeah. I remember
his nickname is actually Water. Jesse Waterbongfeld. Literally, that's what it says here.
I know. No, he's back in Rumble in the Cage. Yeah.
He is not employed by the UFC. He had a draw and a loss in the UFC. But damn it, that guy needs to be in here. Can you imagine coming out to, Cypress Hill Hits from the Bong? That would be the greatest intro song ever.
When you take a draw to that guy, you're not facing Anderson Silva. He has no business going near Anderson Silva.
Yeah. What about Sean Spencer?
Sean Spencer needs to get a Wikipedia before he becomes relevant. I think I think that was going to be a one fight and done for Sean Spencer. I mean, he looked like he could hang, but again, he wasn't facing a top-level guy. So
keep in mind, Sean Spencer is naturally a welterweight, but I think he could do with going back to a small promotion for a couple fights and then making a return after a few more wins. Let's move on. Heavyweight, the next emperor, Mikhail Rusov. This is when I wish I could have the Hunt for Red October soundtrack on demand. Versus Sean Jordan. I said Mikhail Rusov would continue his journey towards greatness after, I think, like 14 straight wins, being knocked off the perch by the Emperor Killer Fabricio Verdum. You said Sean Jordan would win, and in round 1, I looked like Nostradamus.
You did.
But unfortunately, as the saying goes, Mikhail Rusov, Mike Russo, blew his wad.
He really did. It was funny because at some point, I think it was in the end of the first round, Joe Rogan was talking about how wonderful his conditioning is and how unbelievable it is to a regular viewer because of basically it looks like he swallowed a hula hoop. So I was just like, okay, I mean, he might have great conditioning, but he's carrying around like 40 pounds of flab. And
Joe, this is TV, not radio. We can see what we're looking at.
And so then he just stopped fighting, I guess, and Sean Jordan, he took one hell of a beating, but
yeah,
I was right. You were wrong. That happened a lot on this card.
I hate you. First round, though, I really think it could have been scored at 10-8 for Russo.
It absolutely could have, yeah.
I think, this is what I think about Russo. I think Russo, he's a kind of a fighter in the wrong time. Because with his wrestling background and the fact that he actually was landing, his stand-up looked pretty good. This guy looks like he should be back fighting guys like Dan Severn. He just looks to me like a Dan Severn type fighter. But in 2013, that shit's not going to cut it anymore.
No, and you know, Sean Jordan's not going anywhere with his career. He's a retired ball player. I think he was a fullback.
Yes.
His stand-up looked god-awful. And when you're getting picked apart by Mike Russo, Todd Duffy knows how that feels, I guess, from one punch. But, you know, when you're getting picked apart by Mike Russo, your career's not going where it needs to. So Sean Jordan, again, is another less than gatekeeper type guy, but his head took the beating and he pulled it out. I was very happy to see that.
One thing I did notice about this entire card that made me think of you, you said on a previous show, probably 4 or 5 shows ago, that you wanted to see fighters throw more uppercuts because all they throw are hooks and overhands. Mm-hmm. This was the event for uppercuts.
It was.
It was. In round 2, Sean Jordan really kind of changed, I think, the nature of the fight because Russo was going for that takedown and he was just level changing, and Sean Jordan started throwing the uppercut straight into Russo's level change. Mm-hmm. We'll see uppercuts a lot more coming up, but I thought of you.
He was throwing your Undertaker type uppercuts.
Yes,
I liked
it. Kind of the Hadouken Dragon Punch thing. All right, well, Mike Russo, 10-year cop, 25 pounds.
Doesn't
Mike
Russo look like the kind of guy that makes him and Roy Nelson make you think you could do that, right? Like, I know you're like 5'1" or whatever, but which would be our main event, kind of makes a guy of your size. But this fight, for my flabbiness, makes me feel like I could get in there and get beaten up and get, 10 G's or something.
Have you seen Ace Ventura with Jim Carrey?
Yeah, I have.
All right, so you know when they're in the police station and there's a roach crawling along the ground and the big fat guy steps on the roach and goes, "Homicide, Ventura! Now how are you going to solve that?" That's what Mike Russo looks like.
That is what he looks like.
Well, good question, Aguado. First I'd lose 30 pounds. Park and his wife. Let's go to the light heavyweight. I think we've killed Mike Russo enough. Ryan Bader very kindly took a few moments out of his day to step into the octagon, beat the hell out of a poor Belarusian, and then go about his business. I believe it was a 50-second fight. Punch, choke out.
And he got submission of the night for that, which bothers me.
Who would you have given it to?
Natal.
Yeah.
Bader, you have a card where you have 2 options. You have Bader or Natal. I thought not only did Natal deliver a better fight against a more evenly matched opponent, I also thought he had a more beautiful submission that he worked for. Bader simply punched the guy and then grabbed the submission, kind of like what Tito Ortiz did to him.
I think Rogan was saying this is that the head and arm choke that Bader pulled off. First off, I don't believe Matyushenko's ever been submitted, so that's degree of difficulty. Mm-hmm. Also, he's a world-class, or he was at least a world-class wrestler. The way he was doing that choke, I thought, from Mr. Black Belt Joe Rogan's perspective, was fairly innovative. Now, I can't say if it does or not. To me, it just looked like he grabbed onto his head and looped his ankle. Yeah. But I'm not, again, I don't roll with black belts.
He didn't look. It was one of those submissions where it doesn't look like the guy's going to tap, but he was dazed so badly by Bader's shot. And I said this on the preview show. There was no reason that this fight should have ever been made. Hopefully, Matyushenko is just done.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. I like the story of the janitor and all that. Mm-hmm. I don't think if that same punch landed on a fighter half his age, would have dropped. That's just my opinion.
He's taken his fair share. He was great. Not great, but he was top of the line at one time. He is nowhere near that anymore. Yeah,
I mean, back, like they said, I think he fought Tito Ortiz back in 1999. Mm-hmm. That was when you were born. Bader is 15-3 now.
That's when I was born, and I came out taller than you, which was, different.
That's a Mitt Romney impersonation by the late night guy, Jimmy Fallon. All right, so let's move on to welterweight. Did you want to talk more about Bader?
I'm just glad to see. I guess you can call Bader's back on track, but you could have really put a punching bag in the ring against him, and Bader would have looked the same. So it's good to see Bader back on track, but that was just unfair. Matyushenko should not be there.
Bader looks freakishly strong.
He does. He doesn't look like he should be a light heavyweight, but he's also not top tier. He doesn't. I don't think you'll see Bader getting a shot at the title.
I think he's got some work to do. I think he's kind of in the same boat as Rafael Natal. They've got great records, but they've kind of lost every time they've taken a step towards greatness.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the welterweights. Pascal Kraus, the Panzer, defeated fellow German, although American German, Mike Stumpf. Unanimous decision, 30-27, across the board. You didn't think it was that one-sided?
No. Just from first time watching it, I thought Stumpf put on a decent performance, especially for a completely unknown guy. I could have seen enough, and I can't pinpoint which round it was, but there was a round where I thought, Stumpf was surprising me. And I think it was the first. It looked like, I don't know, he was taking it to Kraus and hanging in there. But
right, and I think that, I can't remember exactly what Kraus landed, but he dropped Stumpf towards the end of round one, which I think is which got him the round.
He did. I don't know. It was just interesting to see him hang with him, but the Panzer pulled it out.
The Panzer pulled it out. I got a couple thoughts about this fight. First, Pascal Kraus is a German, and he comes to the United States to train, and he comes from Germany to Milwaukee. I'm sorry? Or as it's known, Milwaukee, the good land. Also, one thing about Mike Stumpf, the guy took a lot of damage, but I, for one, wasn't surprised that he was able to wade through all that punishment seemingly unaffected, because you know what? This kid is from Crystal Lake.
And that means?
Jason Voorhees, Crystal
there
Lake,
you
Camp
go.
Crystal Lake. Thank you very much. And finally, this is another uppercut fight, except there was a twist on it. German innovation, the Superman uppercut. It was crazy.
I liked it.
I did too. It was strange because he was like acting like he was going to come over and then looped it in midair, kind of like the Michael Jordan hand change when he lays it up.
It completely confused Mike Goldberg. He had no idea what he was looking at.
And speaking of Mike Goldberg, welcome back, sir.
Welcome back, yeah.
I was, with all of the rumors and speculation about his drug use, I was really listening closely for things on the broadcast that might clue me in that he actually is a drug addict, like stuff like this. Oh! But to his credit, I didn't detect anything. Must be all rumor and speculation.
Be honest, though, when he was gone and Anik took over, You missed him, didn't you?
Anik is too robotic.
Yeah, Anik's not good. And I saw on Florian's Twitter, he said, you guys really have no idea how funny John Anik is in person. I cannot believe that. I cannot believe he's got any good jokes.
Yeah, I saw that too. Maybe inadvertently he's funny. Like, hey, look, John Anik just stepped on a rake. Although there was a funny thing that Goldberg did. He said to Joe, when they were pimping Joe's little special, you're the funniest comedian out there. And Joe Rogan says, I don't believe that. And Mike Goldberg says, I don't either. Well played, sir. Well played.
Yep.
Featherweight fight, Clay Guida's debut versus Hatsu Hioki. This fight kind of pissed me off. Because
it absolutely pissed me off.
I don't think Clay Guida won that fight.
Neither do I.
He was stood up twice from his takedowns, which means all of that takedown control, the referee is saying, you're not doing anything, I'm standing you up. So, yes, he won the fight because of positional dominance, but Hioki was much cleaner on the feet. And I love Hioki's guard. Like
it was beautiful.
Oh, he was just throwing a crap up left and right, like triangles, Kimuras, all kinds of crazy stuff.
He's able to do that because he's facing a guy that he knows isn't going to try to finish him. Guida's not going to try to do anything out of his comfort zone to finish anybody.
This ended up being a split decision, but honestly, one moron scored this fight 30-27 Clay Guida. Are you freaking kidding me? Round 1, Guida hit one takedown. That was it. Nothing else.
And Joe Rogan said it immediately. That guy needs to be fired today.
Yes, or his testicles need to be put into a vice clamp.
Normally, I'm bummed out. I'm a little annoyed when Joe Rogan steps over the commentator line and shows his fandom by criticizing the referee or criticizing the judge. But in that case, absolutely, I was with him. I don't mind that he crosses over that line. Like you don't hear NFL announcers or whatever do that, but I was happy that he did it because Clay Guida bounced around the whole fight, just jumping around, and Hioki hit him whenever he wanted to. How did Clay Guida
first round? Win? I thought Clay Guida was on those little dancing machine games, where the light steps up and you have to step on it and
DDR.
Yeah,
Dance Dance Revolution.
Exactly. This is because you're young. You know the name of it.
Right.
Other than 2 slams. Nothing. In fact, even in round... This is where Hioki lost the fight, and we can blame the referee for this. I believe the guy's name was Mike Madrigal. He let Guida hold Hioki down and do nothing for like a good 2 minutes in the third round.
Yeah, after...
He should have stood him up a lot earlier.
No, he definitely should have. And throughout the fight, he's saying, you got to work or I'm going to stand you up. You got to work or I'm going to stand you up. And Clay Guida's going, yes, sir. And then he tries to advance or maybe throws a punch, and then that's good enough. If you're telling the guy from round 1, you got to work or I'm going to stand you up, it's like you're repeating yourself. Just show him, set the precedent, and then when he doesn't do it, don't repeat yourself. Just stand him up. You know what I mean? Why do you got to keep telling him? That type of thing, and we're going to get to this in the main event, but that type of inconsistency in refereeing bothers me so badly about this sport. It's got to be consistent.
I mean, to be honest, I was actually back on Clay Guida's side. He was at home. He had the pimp. In fact, when he showed up to the weigh-ins, he had the long hair and a full beard, and he's a carpenter. I'm like, oh my God, it's Jesus. Jesus is going to fight in the UFC. Then he shaved it off for sort of the Italian pizza man porno mustache, and then everyone at the crowd, Guida. I was like, okay, I'll cheer for Guida. And then I watched the first 3 rounds, the 3 rounds of this fight, and I'm like, oh my God, this is really, really annoying. Hatsu Hioki was far more dominant on the ground. In fact, the round 3 takedown, he almost went straight into a triangle. Mm-hmm. It just irritates the shit out of me.
I don't understand.
The thing that irritated me the most was after the end of round 2, Clay Guida pops up and clapping his hands and holds his hands up like, yep, that's 2 rounds in a row, I just won. Oh... how can you think that you're doing whatever? Clay Guida, what do you think of him at featherweight? Do you think he's got...
He says he wants to stay there. He said his own words were, I've got work to do here. And that's fine, because you can't cut it in the lightweight division where there's beasts like Anthony Pettis and Cerrone and people that aren't going to put up with your... I know he fought them before, but... He doesn't belong in fighting to me. If your style is to bounce around and bounce around and bounce around and not do anything, you shouldn't be fighting. But he says he's got work to do there, so.
But okay, so I got two thoughts. First off, if he stays in featherweight, he won't be able to beat Frankie Edgar ever.
No.
He'll have the same problem that he had in lightweight. And second, here's the difference between Clay Guida, who I dislike as a fighter and his fighting style, and John Fitch. At the end of the fight, the guys that fight John Fitch almost have to be helped out of the ring because they're that tired.
Yep.
They've been totally worn down and broken. Watch Hioki in that fight. When he's pressed up against the cage in round 3, he's just looking around like, okay, he's just holding
whenever
me.
You're ready, ref. Yeah, whenever you're ready.
He's like, okay, I guess I'll put my legs around him because I don't feel tired. I'm not getting damaged. There's no effect on the other fighter. He's not imposing anything on them other than I'm going to make sure you sit down.
Mm-hmm. That's all he's doing. I think it was the end of the fight that he locked his hands and for about, 2 minutes was trying to slam him and did nothing. He just had his hands locked, and the ref was just cool with that. So, sure, you're stopping the other guy from doing something, but you're not doing anything.
Dana White sidestepped the whole conversation. They asked him what he thought in the post-fight presser of this fight compared to the Gray Maynard fight, and he said, we had production difficulties, so I didn't get to see this fight. Yeah, couldn't you have shared the production difficulties with the rest of us, so we could have skipped it too?
Right.
Let's go on to...
They had production difficulties throughout.
Yeah. Let's go on to the last fight of the undercards. This one was beautiful. TJ Grant KOs Matt Wyman with a series of short elbows.
Wonderful fight.
Wonderful.
Did you see at the end when he was landing those elbows and the camera was over top near them, blood shot out of Wyman's face onto the lens of the camera? Did you see that?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I went crazy. That was awesome.
Yeah, Matt Wyman, there were 2 really bad cuts in this fight and in the very next fight in the main card, and they were nasty cuts, like the bleeders. The funny thing is sometimes the announcers have this sort of precognition, and they're able to predict exactly what's going to happen right as it's about to happen, and that happened this fight when Joe Rogan said TJ Grant went to Thailand and worked on his Muay Thai, and then literally 10 seconds later, Muay Thai elbows, bang, 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 bang. Matt Wyman, dead. Clinically dead. I think his heart stopped for 15 seconds in the ring.
It was terrible. It was so awesome, though. If you go back, and I guess they showed the slow motion, just to see him time those elbows, the second that Wyman had a quick twitch, Grant just followed it with an elbow straight to the face. It was beautiful. I thought, and I know there's probably a lot of people, including you, that are going to disagree, but I thought this was knockout of the night. At least for me it was.
This was a pretty damn good one. Although, when we get to knockout of the night, you have to admit the rarity of a liver kick is something special.
No, it definitely is. Well, where do you see TJ Grant in the division at this point? Where does this put him?
Well, he's got a nice little streak going. I think I read somewhere that he could fight Jim Miller, and I'd like that fight.
I think he called out Jim Miller, and I think they look like 2 hard-nosed type guys.
Yeah, I think that'd be a nice fight.
I'd see maybe Miller taking that, but Grant now looks legit. Looks like a force.
Yeah, he's a top 10 lightweight now, at least in my opinion. And in that division, that's really saying something.
Yeah, because Jim Miller, as we all know, is hyped, right? Nothing but hype.
You're just living in the past, aren't you? I can't wait until we get to the Rampage Jackson fight and you get to gloat. You're going to take gloating to a whole nother level.
No, you absolutely can't wait. It's going to be wonderful.
All right. You have anything else you want to say about the prelims before we end part 1?
I think that the prelims were, like we said, it was kind of like a Strikeforce show. It was one guy that's outmatched by the other guy, except for the Hioki Guida fight. I thought it went pretty much the way that we had expected. Yeah.
Hioki won 2 rounds in that fight. I don't care however you slice it. Octagon control, positional control, way too much emphasis in our sport.
Yeah, even if he didn't win 2 rounds, he absolutely won 1 round. 30-27 for Guida is a joke.
Yeah. And it's the kind of joke that's not funny.
Nope,
That's
not
the kind
at
of
all.
joke it is. All right, well, that ends up part 1. I'm Lucky Rob. This is, of course, Mitch.
Mitchell.
Mitchell, I'm sorry, you hate being called that. This is, of course, Mitchell. That's part 1. Join us for part 2, starting next.